Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to learn about what are the distribution plots and following are the topics that we are going to discuss in this video. Firstly, we will understand what are the distribution plot. Then we will learn how we create it in the Seaborn library. Then we will learn about the displot function. So let's begin by understanding what is distribution plot. So in the Seaborn, distribution plots are used to analyze both univariate and the bivariate distributions. So now we will move ahead and learn how we create the distribution plots. So if you want to create the distribution plot in the Seaborn library, you have to call the following functions. So the first function is displot function. The next one is join plot function. The third one is pair plot function, and the fourth one is rug plot function. So we will learn about these functions in details in the videos. So firstly we will understand about the displot function in this video. So I will explain you first what this function does. So basically the distribution plot has only the one task, that is showing the distribution and range of a data values over a scale as its name suggests. And in the Seaborn library, if you want to create the distribution plot, you have to call the function distplot function if you are using the older version. But if you are using the newer version or the version greater than 0.11, you have to call the displot function. The difference between the two functions is that if you are using the older version, the function name is dist plot, and if you are using the newer version, the name of the function is dis. The t is not in the newer function. So by calling these function, you create the distribution plot. And we have three types of distribution plots named as histogram, kde and ECDF plot in the Seaborn library. And if you want to achieve these plot through the displot function, you have to pass the kind keyword argument to the displot function and set its value to the respective plot. So now we will see the syntax of the displot function. So the syntax of the function is Seaborn dot displot, and in parentheses you have to pass the different parameters. The first two parameters are the x and y. These are the data points that define the x and y axis location. Second one is hue. It is a grouping variable that will produce a component with different colors. The next one is kind. It decides the what kind of a plot you want to draw. We have an option hist, KDE and ECDF, and by default it has a value hist. The next one is rug. If it true, it display the marginal ticks for each observation. The next one is stat. It calculates the aggregate statics for each bin, and options available are count, frequency, probability, proportion, percent and density. You can use any of the option as per your choice. The next one is bins. It is the number of bins to be displayed. The next one is discrete. This is used to avoid the gaps that may appear if it's set to false. The next one is KDE. If it's set to true, it computes the kernel density estimate to smooth the distribution. The next one is color. So when hue mapping is not used and you want to specify any one of the color for the bins, you can choose this keyword argument. The next one is bin width. It specifies the width for the each bin. And the last one is data. It is nothing but the data set that is being used. So we will learn about this function in detail with the help of example. So here is the code. I will explain you this coding line in detail. So you can see that in the first two lines, I import the necessary library. The first one is Seaborn as SNS alias name, and the next one is matplotlib with the pyplot module as a PLT. After that, I want to read the default dataset So I call the function load underscore dataset, pass the default name of the dataset as an argument which I want to read. And here the name of the dataset which I want to read is Texas. Then I want to print the top 20 values of the dataset. So I call the head function, pass 20 as a value to it, and I call the print function to print these value. Now I execute this cell and show you what this dataset represents. So here is the dataset. You can see that it starts from zeros and ends at 90. So basically this dataset includes the details on the passengers who took taxis, including whether they gave the driver tip or not, the date and the time of the pickup and the drop off, the number of passengers in the taxi, the distance travel, the fare, the total amount of a toll, the pickup and the drop off zone, and the pickup and drop off bureau, and also the payment mechanism and the color of the cabs that passenger use. So now we will move ahead and learn some examples to create a distribution plot using the displot function. So here you can see that firstly I call the set function as I want to change the appearance of the plot, and I pass a style as a keyword argument to it and set its style to the white grid. Then I want to visualize the distribution plot between the total amount the passenger paid to the driver of the taxis dataset. So I call the displot function, set its x value to the total. So here the total is the name of the column. I will show you. Here you can see that we have a column with the name total. So here we have a column with the name total. So it takes the total column of the data, which is a data underscore set. So this data underscore set value is set to the taxis in the above. You can see that here data underscore set variable set to the taxis value. Then I want to add the labels at the axis. So I call the x label function and the y label function, pass labels as an argument which I want to add to both of the axes. Additionally, I pass the font size and the color as a keyword argument to both of the function, as I want to change the font size to 50 and color to the orange. Then I want to add a title on the plot. So we get to know what this plot represent. So call the title function, pass title as an argument to it, and addition to this I also pass keyword argument font weight to bold, as I want to change the font weight of the title. And in last I call the show function as I want to display the plot on the user's screen. Now I execute this cell and show you the output how the plot looks. So here you can see that x-axis represent the total and the y-axis represent the count, and this plot represent the count versus total. So in this output we will get the histogram plot showing the count of the occurrence of the total values. So by default the displot function represent the count and the histogram plot. So now we will move ahead and see one more example. So again I change the appearance of the plot and set its style to the white grid, and I again call the displot function as I want to visualize the fare that passenger paid to the driver of the taxis dataset. And from the above example you know that by default the histogram count the number of the occurrence as I told you, but this time I want to visualize the distribution of each of these fare in percentage. So for this reason here I pass a stat as a keyword argument and set its value to percent, and I also want to change the color of the histogram and set it to one color. So I pass the keyword argument color, set its value to the light green. Again I want to add labels at the axis, so I call the x label in the y label function. To adding a title I call the title function, and to show the plot I call the show function. Now I execute this cell and show you the output. So here you can see that here x-axis represent the fare, y-axis represent the percentage, and this plot represent the percentage versus fare. So you can conclude that we will get a histogram plot showing the percent of the fare values. So I will show you. Here you can see that by default we have accounts. So when we set the stat value to percent, we get the percentage. Now we will move ahead and see one more example. So in this case, I again set its style to the white grid. Then I call the displot function as I want to visualize the tip that passenger give to the driver of the taxi's dataset. And from the above example, you have seen that by default the bin size is too small. You can see that the size of the bin is too small. You can't easily count it. So I want to change it to the larger size. For this reason, here I call the bin width keyword argument and I set its value to 5. And additionally, this time I pass a stat argument and set its value to probability. Then I call the x label and the y label function to add labels at the axis, title function to add a title, and the show function to display the plot. Now I execute this cell and you can see that now the bin size is bigger as compared to the previous one or the default one. So here x-axis represent the tips and the y-axis represent the probability, and this plot represent the probability versus tip. So I'll tell you one more thing. Here you can see that I passed the x label and the y label and set its value to the orange. For this reason, the labels at the axis are printed in the orange color. So we can conclude that we get a histogram plot showing the probability of the tip value with the bigger bin width. Now we will move to the another example. I again set its style to the white grid. So this time I call the displot function to visualize the total amount that the passenger paid to the driver of the taxi's dataset. And from the above example, you have seen that the number of the bin is automatically selected. In this case 3, and in the above case you can't count it because they are very small, but they are automatically selected. But if you want to change it or select it by yourself, you have to pass a keyword argument bins and set its value to 100. And in my case I set it to 100. You can set it according to your choice. So after that I call the x label and the y label function to add labels at the axis. Then I call the title function and last I call the show function. Now I execute this cell and show you the output. You can see that now it have a 100 bins and its x-axis represent the total, y-axis represent the count, and this plot represent the count versus total. So we can conclude that we will get the histogram plot with the 100 bins. So now we will see the next example. So here I call the displot function to visualize the fare that passenger pay to the driver of the taxi's dataset. Additionally, here I pass a U as a keyword argument to group the color data points with different colors, and I also pass the KDE keyword argument to the function to set its value to true, as I want to create a kernel density estimator to plot, because in KDE plot we don't lose any value by snatching the ranges of a value into the bins. So here I also want to generate a plot with different color map values, so I pass the palette and set its value to bright. Then I call the x label and the y label function, title function, and the show function, and I execute this cell and I will show you the output. So here we get the histogram plot with the KDE with different color map. So here x-axis represent the fare, y-axis represent the count. This plot represent the count versus fare. The blue histogram represent the yellow color taxi, and the orange histogram represent the green color taxis. So this line shows the KDE plot and the histograms are by the default, and here the orange line is also shows the KDE plot. So it tells that here we have the maximum number of counts where this curve move. So let's see one more example. Here I call the displot function to visualize the tips that passenger give to the driver of the taxi's dataset. So additionally I pass discrete keyword argument here and set its bool value to true. This argument is used to get rid of the gaps inside the bin. Then I call the X label and the Y label function to add labels at axis, title function to add a title, and the show function to display the plot. Now I execute this cell and show you the output. So here you can see that X axis shows the tip, Y axis shows the count, and the plot shows the count versus tip. And you can see that it removes the unnecessary gap and set its bin width to 1 by default when we use the discrete keyword argument and set its value to true. So with this we have learned about the displot function and the distribution plots, and in the next video we will learn about the joint plot function and the pair plot function to create a distribution plot in Seaborn library.